The chandelier-lit dining hall of the Grand Pinnacle, Seattle's most exclusive restaurant, fell into a stunned hush as Victor Langley's voice thundered across the polished mahogany tables. "I'll give you $100,000 if you serve me in Chinese," he declared, his tone laced with mockery. A cascade of crisp $100 bills spilled onto Amara Jackson's silver tray, each note landing like a deliberate insult, transforming the tray into a stage for public humiliation. The money fanned out across the gleaming surface, a grotesque spectacle that drew the gaze of Seattle's elite, tech moguls, venture capitalists, and socialites, now fixated on the young black waitress in her impeccable black uniform. Amara Jackson, 31, had never imagined her life as a doctor of sociolinguistics would lead her here, balancing $6,000 bottles of Bordeaux for men who didn't bother to meet her eyes when ordering. Victor, reclining in his bespoke Italian leather chair, flashed a predatory grin, his artificially bronzed face glowing with self-assured arrogance. "What's the matter, darling? Isn't $100,000 enough?" He gestured to the three Chinese investors at his table, their tailored suits and reserved expressions betraying their discomfort. "My colleagues here will judge if your Chinese is convincing." The Grand Pinnacle, perched on the 60th floor of a glass tower overlooking Puget Sound, had morphed into a modern gladiatorial arena. Patrons at nearby tables feigned interest in their truffle-laden plates, but their ears were tuned to the drama Victor was orchestrating. It was a Thursday evening in Seattle's tech-driven heart, where men like Victor shaped global industries between sips of vintage wine. Amara stared at the money on her tray. $100,000, more than 2 years of her waitress salary, enough to erase her father's mounting medical debts, to enroll her younger sister in a private school far from the city's underfunded districts, to finally loosen the knot of dread that had tightened in her chest for 5 years. But she knew this wasn't about money. It was about power. Victor Langley, a 54-year-old tech magnate who'd built his fortune on data analytics, was proving to his investors that he could dominate anyone, especially a black woman serving tables. "You know what's best," Victor continued, clapping slowly in mock admiration, the sound sharp as a whip. "If you fail, you'll apologize right here, in front of everyone, for wasting our time. I'd wager my private jet you can't even say thank you in Chinese." The Chinese investors shifted uncomfortably. One, an older man with wire-rimmed glasses, furrowed his brow, his unease palpable. Amara's fingers gripped the tray, her knuckles whitening under the strain. For a fleeting moment, her mind drifted to her former life. Dr. Amara Jackson, celebrated linguist, delivering keynote addresses at global symposiums, her name a beacon of academic excellence. 5 years ago, that life had unraveled when her father, Clarence, was diagnosed with a rare autoimmune disorder. The medical bills started as a trickle and swelled into a tsunami. Insurance denied experimental treatments, and bankruptcy loomed. Now she stood here, a prop in Victor's cruel theater. "I accept," she said, her voice steady, cutting through the room's tension like a blade. Victor's smirk wavered for a split second. "What's that?" he asked, leaning forward. "I accept your challenge, Mr. Langley," Amara replied, her tone resolute. "I'll serve you in Chinese, and when I'm done, you'll pay me the $100,000 in front of everyone." Whispers rippled through the dining hall as patrons scoffed at the audacity of a waitress daring to take on such an impossible task. But Amara's eyes held a quiet fire, a serenity born of surviving storms far fiercer than this. If this story of prejudice and redemption captivates you, hold on, because what unfolded next would etch itself into the memory of everyone present. Victor clapped again, the sound echoing like gunfire. "Perfect. Let's make this more interesting." He turned to the investors, his grin widening to reveal a hint of menace. "Gentlemen, you're about to witness pure arrogance. This server thinks she can impress you." Wei Zheng, the eldest investor, adjusted his glasses, his discomfort deepening. "Victor, perhaps we should reconsider—" No way," Victor interrupted, waving a dismissive hand. "You need to understand how things work in Seattle. These people live in a fantasy world." He gestured at Amara with a sneer. "I bet she's watched a few kung fu movies and thinks she can pass off a few phrases as fluency." Jian Lu, the second investor, frowned, his English impeccable. "This is getting uncomfortable, Victor." "Uncomfortable?" Victor laughed, his voice booming. "This is educational. You want to invest in Seattle's tech scene? You need to see the reality." He pointed at Amara. "She's probably a high school dropout, only fit for carrying trays." Amara stood motionless, but her mind raced back 5 years. Dr. Amara Jackson, tenured professor of sociolinguistics at the University of Washington, expert in multilingual discourse analysis, fluent in 9 languages, consulted by global corporations for cross-cultural communication strategies. Then came the call at 2 a.m. Your father's condition is critical. Clarence Jackson, 62, her anchor, had collapsed. The hospital bills piled up. Specialists, experimental drugs, round-the-clock care. Amara sold her Capitol Hill loft, her hybrid SUV, her collection of rare linguistic texts. She took a leave from the university, then a sabbatical, then couldn't return. When Clarence emerged from a 7-month coma, he was a shadow of himself, requiring constant care. The debt soared to $1.2 million. Bankruptcy followed. Her academic post was filled, colleagues stopped calling, and friends vanished when her status did. You people always want more than you deserve, Victor sneered, drunk on his own power. Always pretending to be something you're not. Amara blinked, snapping back to the present. She studied Victor, a man who mangled Chinese names and made cringe-worthy cultural gaffes in meetings. Last week, she'd overheard him confuse Taiwanese and Thai traditions while pitching to Shanghai clients. He was a cultural imposter cloaked in wealth. What Victor didn't know was that Amara held a PhD from Berkeley in sociolinguistics, specializing in Chinese linguistic variation. She'd lectured on Mandarin phonology to packed auditoriums at Tsinghua University. Do you know how many languages I speak? Victor asked rhetorically, smirking at the investors. English and money. That's what matters in the real world. Ming Chen, the third investor, spoke up, his English precise despite a faint accent. Perhaps we should give her a fair chance. A fair chance? Victor scoffed. Look at her. She's a tray carrier, probably scraping by in a shared apartment in Rainier Valley. He wasn't wrong. Amara shared a cramped duplex with 3 roommates, worked nights at the Grand Pinnacle, and days as a caregiver at a clinic. She slept 4 hours on good days, every dollar funneled to her father's medications and therapy. But Victor didn't know she still accessed academic databases, corresponded with linguists in Guangzhou in fluent Mandarin, or that her dissertation on cross-cultural linguistic adaptation had been cited in over 300 international papers. Let's set the rules, Victor announced, savoring the moment. If she can present the menu in Chinese, full descriptions, not just words, I'll pay the $100,000. Wei tried again. Victor, this isn't necessary. But Victor barreled on. When she fails, and she will, she'll kneel right here and apologize to everyone for wasting our time, and admit she's a fraud. The room grew deathly quiet. Even the waitstaff froze. Ming shook his head. This is wrong. It's right, Victor snapped, slamming the table, making crystal glasses clink. I don't tolerate liars or pretenders. Amara's calm masked a fire forged in 5 years of hardship. Waiting tables had taught her when to retreat and when to fight. This was a fight. I accept all terms, she said evenly. Even kneeling and apologizing if I fail? Victor pressed, his eyes glinting. Yes, she replied, her voice unshaken. Victor spread his arms theatrically. Gentlemen, prepare for a lesson in delusion versus reality. He was oblivious to the force he'd unleashed, a determination honed by years of quiet suffering. Now poised to erupt. Very well, Victor declared. No cheating. He signaled a waiter. Bring the special Chinese menu, the one for our Beijing partners. The waiter hesitated. Sir, that menu has over 60 dishes with intricate culinary terms. Perfect, Victor grinned. If she's a language expert, she'll handle it. Wei shifted uncomfortably. Victor, this is cruel. It's pedagogy, Victor retorted. She needs to learn her limits. What Victor didn't know was that Amara had spent a year in Beijing as a visiting scholar at Tsinghua University, studying Chinese culinary linguistics. Her mentor, Professor Zhao Min, had been relentless. If you can't describe a Sichuan dish in perfect Beijing Mandarin, how will you mediate global trade negotiations? Amara had spent sleepless nights in a modest Beijing flat, memorizing regional culinary terms, cultural nuances, and slang known only to master chefs. She'd presented her research in Mandarin to a panel of linguistic scholars, enduring 4 hours of grilling without a single English word. While we wait, Victor sneered. Tell us about your language experience. Subtitled dramas? Mingchen spoke up. Victor, why does this matter so much? Because, Victor leaned back, you're considering a $300 million deal with me. You need to know I can spot a fraud. This woman's lying about her skills. Jianlo shook his head. That's irrelevant to business. It's about integrity, Victor insisted, blind to Amara observing his every gesture. She'd honed a skill in 6 months at the Grand Pinnacle, reading arrogant men. Victor was an open book, careless, culturally ignorant, a fraud masquerading as a global tycoon. The waiter returned with a leather-bound menu. Here it is, Victor said. his confidence faltering as he glimpsed the dense Chinese characters. 5 dishes, full descriptions in Chinese. Amara opened the menu and nearly smiled. It was a Beijing-focused menu, identical to one she'd dissected at Tsinghua. "May I choose the dishes?" she asked calmly. "Pick the easiest," Victor mocked. "You'll fail anyway." Amara had presented on Beijing culinary evolution to a room of 400 at Tsinghua, including renowned chefs. "One question," she said, addressing the investors. "Are any of you fluent in Mandarin?" White blinked. "I know some." Jian shook his head. "Basic," Ming smiled. "I'm fluent. I lived in Shanghai for 15 years. Victor hesitated, a flicker of unease crossing his face. "One more thing," Amara said. "If I describe 5 dishes, their regional origins, techniques, and cultural significance, you double the bet to $200,000. If I fail, I'll work here for free for 3 months. The room went silent. Victor wavered, but with every eye on him, he couldn't retreat. "Deal," he said, shaking her hand. What he didn't know was that Amara had translated for the Chinese embassy in Washington, D.C., her dissertation on linguistic cultural bridges published by Harvard University Press, and she'd dined with Beijing families, mastering dialects even natives struggled with. As Victor braced for what he thought would be a public shaming, Amara took a deep breath, ready to show the chasm between privilege-fueled arrogance and hard-earned expertise. The investors leaned forward, the room held its breath, and Amara began speaking in Mandarin so flawless that Ming Chen's eyes widened in awe. "Good evening, gentlemen," she said in Mandarin, her tones precise and academic. "Let me present tonight's special menu." She launched into a description of Beijing-style braised lamb, detailing its Qing dynasty origins and slow-cooking techniques, her voice flowing like poetry. "My God," Ming muttered in English. "She's using terminology only master chefs know." Victor paled. "Is that real Chinese?" "It's perfect," Ming said, mesmerized. Amara switched to Cantonese. "For our second dish, we offer Cantonese-style steamed fish, a tradition tied to Guangdong's coastal heritage." Ming clapped. "Flawless Cantonese! Who are you?" Victor demanded, sweat beading on his forehead. "I am Dr. Amara Jackson," she said calmly. "PhD in sociolinguistics from Berkeley, former professor at the University of Washington, fluent in 9 languages, visiting scholar at Tsinghua University, author of Linguistic Cultural Bridges, published by Harvard. I translated for the UN and global summits. 5 years ago, I left to care for my father after his illness bankrupted me." The room was silent. "You're a doctor?" Wei asked. "With a postdoc in Chinese linguistic variation," Amara replied. "I studied culinary linguistics in Beijing." Victor choked. "A doctor can't be a waitress." "Why not?" Amara countered. "Don't doctors have families to support?" Ming stood. "Victor, you tried to humiliate a world-class scholar." "I didn't know!" Victor protested. "Exactly," Amara said, her voice cutting. "You assumed I was nothing because I'm a black woman serving tables." She resumed in Mandarin, describing a Sichuan hot pot, its chili-infused broth tied to Han Dynasty trade routes. Ming translated, awestruck. "She's citing historical culinary texts." Victor shouted, "Stop! This is a setup!" "A setup?" Wai said icily. "She knows more about Chinese culture than you ever will." Amara set the menu down. "Mr. Langley, your $200,000, please." Trembling, Victor counted out the bills, each one peeling away his bravado. "Now," Amara said, "apologize. Not to me, but to everyone you've judged based on your biases." Victor scanned the room, Seattle's elite witnessing his downfall. "I'm sorry," he mumbled. "Louder," Amara said. "I'm sorry," he shouted, the words reverberating. 10 months later, Amara sat in her office on the 55th floor of a Seattle skyscraper, director of global cultural strategy at Jianglu International, earning $220,000 a year. Ming Chen had offered her the role, saying, "Your intellect and resilience are vital for our global vision." Her father, Clarence, received top-tier care, and they lived in a spacious Belltown condo. Victor wasn't as fortunate. The story of his humiliation went viral, dubbed "Arrogant Tycoon Humbled by Dr. Waitress," with 25 million video views. The Chinese investors canceled their $300 million deal, and Victor's tech empire collapsed. His wife divorced him, his children cut contact, and he now works as a clerk at a Tacoma electronics store. In a guest lecture at the University of Washington, Amara said, "Victor thought wealth made him superior, but intelligence and dignity aren't for sale." The audience gave a standing ovation, some in tears. Amara learned that true revenge isn't destruction. It's building a legacy so powerful that prejudice becomes irrelevant. Life tried to silence her, but she answered with brilliance, soaring beyond every barrier. If this story of triumph over adversity moved you, subscribe for more tales that prove greatness transcends race, origin, or circumstance, defined only by the courage to exceed all expectations.